Hey everybody, I forgot where my microphone was at. But I'm Sean and this is my channel, Southern Audacity. I thank you all for dropping in and I hope that you enjoy this video. Before I get started, I do want to give a big thank you. I have a whole lot of subscribers over the past 3 months, and I am truly thankful for you all. And for my older subscribers, I am even more thankful to you because you've hung in there with me, and I have not done a video in 3 months. And I'll tell you, it's because 3 months ago, me and my whole family got sick with that C-word virus, and we were literally out of commission. So we have all recovered, and I am thankful nobody had to be admitted to ICU, no situations like that. Technically, I guess you could say we had mild cases, but if that was mild, I don't want to see severe, okay? But without any further ado, I'm going to get started with this video, and I will see you at the table. Okay, so I have not figured out how to record on the actual screen of my computer. So what I'm doing is just holding my phone and showing you how I pull my design into Sew What Pro. Now, Sew What Pro will have an icon like this, the little sewing machine icon, when you upload it or install it on your computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to this little, it's a yellow, like a file folder, and I'm going to click that open so that I can start searching for my files. And I know what file I want, and I'm going to go to this PC, and then I'm going to search the flash drive that I need, and I'm going to go down to the folder that it is in, and it is a crown. Where is the crown at? And I think I'm using the, no, not CD, I'm using DST, but I'm going to use the 6.5. Okay, and so now once I have a design pulled up, you see how this hoop size pulled in. This is a 5x7 hoop, and I know that because up here is showing how big the design and the hoop is. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, because I'm using Brother, and a lot of people design their designs or digitize their designs for a Tajima format, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to my hoop. Where's the hoop? It's right here. And this box will pop open. Yep, you see it's under Tajima right now. I'm going to switch this so that my machine will recognize it when I resave it. I'm going to select Brother, and then I'm just going to select a bigger hoop because I'm going to put this on a 6x10 hoop. So that will be this Brother 10.24 by 6.3. Okay, that one. And I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to take and use my cursor and just move it straight up the center, because what I'm going to then do is put the name under here. Okay, so now to get the name, it's pretty much doing the same thing again. Now I'm going to go a different route this time as far as how I open up my file, because now I already have a design on the screen. I won't do the folder, because if I do the folder, it's going to open up a whole new screen. It'll be like starting over again. I'm sorry. So I'm going to go to File, and you will see a icon that says File, and you'll see Merge. No, not that. Let's hit Cancel and File and Merge. You want to merge because you're going to bring another design into that design. And so now I'm going to go back and find the other folder that I need, and I like the fonts that are by Designs by Juju, and I just name my files, you know, in a manner in which I can find what I'm looking for later. And I know I want to use the Joey font, so I'm going through Designs by Juju, and I'm trying to figure out where is Joey font at. I think, yeah, there it is. And the Joey font that I have saved is in a Pez format, but it's okay, I promise you. Because you could always save it under whatever format you need it to be under with designs with So What Pro. Let's see here. I'm going to go through and look for a R, and it'll show you what size you're looking at. And I do apologize. I know that some people have told me that there's a way to type all of your letters in using the BX format. I never learned that with So What Pro, and so I don't have a problem using it the old way. So there's the R, and let's see if that R is an okay size. You can move it as long as you don't join the colors. So I like the size of that R, and because it's going to go on a hooded towel, I don't want the name to be too small. So what I am going to do is what a lot of digitizers will tell you to not do. I'm going to resize this crown. So do you see how when I click on the area of the crown, I get like this box around it? So that means that crown has been selected. I'm going to go up here to Tools, and I'm going to click Resize, and then this box will open up. And I'm going to keep the aspect ratio locked. I'm going to keep all of these things checked off, and that will keep it balanced. So I'm going to resize it by 5%. So the way you resize it to make it smaller, you're actually subtracting. So where it's at 100% right now, you want to take away 5%. So that means you're going to make it 95%. I don't know why it works that way, but that's what it does. And now I'm going to click OK. And you see it kind of got smaller, just a little bit smaller. I'm going to scoot it up just a little bit. And I think I might need to resize it by another 5%. And you can actually resize by as little as 1%. But I'm going to do another 5%. So that'll be 95. And I'll click OK. And OK, so I think that'll be small enough. So now I'm going to get back to the name, putting his name back in here. I've got the first letter selected by merging it in. So now the program has basically captured the letters. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but I'm going to go up to this icon right here, this little blue icon, and it says insert lettering from info pane. That's what I'm going to select, because when I do that, all of my designs pop open that I've been working with. So I don't need this crown design anymore. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to select it to delete it. And it doesn't delete it from your actual embroidery design that you're setting up, and it doesn't delete it from the file either. Now I've got my letters, and this is the Joey font by Designs by Juju. And I'm sorry, the crown itself is from ZDIGITIZING on Etsy, and he does have a website as well, but I always buy the designs from him off of Etsy. But the digitization is great. So I'm going to go back to these letters, and what I always do to make sure I am staying in the right size, I select the original letter again just to make sure it is that size letter. And so it is that size letter, and I'm just going to make sure it's highlighted, and I'm going to click delete on my keyboard and delete it. So I want to make sure I stay within this here section of letters, and I'm just going to spell his name out, R, and it pops over right here. And to balance it, okay, sorry, I dropped my phone. But to balance it out, I want to just kind of, not balance it out, to space it appropriately, I'm going to just move it around a little bit. And then I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to find the Y within that same group, and it will pop up right next to it. And now I need to find the A, and I'm doing all capital letters. It pops up right there. And then I just need that L. Okay. And that pops up right there. And I am going to space that away just a little bit. Okay. And let's see here. I think that may work okay. Now, one thing I do like to do to make sure all of my letters are kind of even, I'll look for a line that I can put them up against. And I just scooted that out of the way for the moment as far as the crown is concerned. So you see how there's that line right there? I'm going to use that line just like you would use a line if you were writing on paper. And I'm going to try to get all of my letters balanced onto that line, or lined up onto that line, so that it looks a little neater. And this is not too difficult. It's just moving it up and dropping it back down. And they won't be exactly lined up, you know, the way a machine would line it up if you were just, you know, using a computer to do the lining up. And I think that's why the BX is what a lot of people like using. But like I said, I've never learned to use it. So I have all of that there. And the next thing we're going to do is line up the overall design. Okay. So before we actually line everything up, what I need to do, I want to join all of these letters together. That way the machine will know that it's all going to be stitched under one color. The pattern does not fit. Yes, I know the pattern does not fit. This warning popped up because that part of the crown is outside of the sewing field. But no, we'll fix that in a minute. Well, let's just fix that now. And I just drug that back down. That little black dot right there is the center line for this. So it is lined up in the center there. But now getting back to this name, I want to make sure all of these colors are the same. And I'm going to merge them. Now to merge them, it's not very difficult. What I will do is I want to get rid of this. I need to see my other part of the design. So I'm going to click this blue icon again. And then this pops back up. These are all of your stitches. So you can see that is the placement stitch. So you'll know where that applique piece is going to go. That's that number 1. Number 2 is the tack down stitch that covers the same place. Number 3 is the applique placement stitch for the next piece of fabric. Number 4 is the tack down stitch for that piece of fabric. Number 5 is the satin stitch for the top part of the crown. And then number 6 is this, which I'll end up stitching that in a different color. I'm using a single needle, so I don't worry about color assignments because I'm going to use whatever thread I know needs to be used next. But now you see 7 through 11 are each separate stitches. You don't want that. You want these to all be joined together from 7 to 11. And so we're going to do a merge function, okay? And to merge it, the first thing I always want to do is pay attention to what other colors are in here. Because for some reason, I have had colors merge where I didn't want them to merge, but it might have just been user error. But I try to make sure each stitch is an actual different color. And you can do that. Like this reddish brown, if I wanted to change that to yellow, I'm going to select it over here. Then I'm going to look down here and scroll until I see the color that I actually want to use. So There's the cream yellow. There's not another yellow in here. Okay, I'll change it to deep gold. Okay, so I've changed that to deep gold, and now it's deep gold. Okay, so just keeping that in mind, when you go to merge colors, you want to make sure the colors are all the same and that they're not the same color as something you don't want merged into it. I hope that that makes sense. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up here to the edit. Okay, you have your edit function right here. You're going to select edit, and we're going to join. It's not actually merging threads, it's join threads. You click that, and then this box will pop up. Do you want to join all threads of the same color? No. Do you want to join all adjacent threads of the same color? No. What I want to do is join all threads of the same color starting at thread number. So I'm going to select that button, but I've got to change this. So always make sure you're paying attention to what number thread you want to start at. So I'm going to start at number 7. So it'll join 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay. So I'm going to take that number 1, delete it, and we're going to start at number 7. And then we're going to click OK. And you see it's just one stitch now. So now all of this is all joined together. I can line that up to center it within the design. So now it's centered. Okay. And so we have the design the way we want it. It's lined up and centered, and we have as little or as few stitches or thread changes or color changes as we can possibly get, because we took number 7 through 11 and made them 1 so that your needle doesn't keep stopping. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, that this is all saved, this is all done. I'm going to save it by going up to File and Save As. And I'm going to save this in my folder where I save all my customer designs at, customer personalized. And I'm going to call this Royal 2. Okay. And it'll save as Baby Lock Pez, or you could change it and save it to whatever you want. You know, whether you've got Brother, Barutin, Happy, Melco, whatever format you need to save it under, you save it under the format that you need it to be in. Okay. So my machine will do DST or .pes. So I'm just going to go ahead and save it as the Pez, and that's that. So I have it saved under that folder. Goodness gracious, I started stuttering. But I have it saved under that folder, and that's just for long-term storage. What I will also do is the flash drive that I use on the embroidery machine, it's only a 2 gig flash drive because the machine will only tolerate reading so many files, and then it just won't see anything. So I only keep a few designs on the flash drive that I use on the actual machine. But I'm going to save this to that flash drive as well, and I'll take it to the machine, and we'll get ready to start preparing our materials so that we can stitch. Okay, so for my supplies, I am going to use a few different things here. Of course, I have a hand towel that is going to be the hood, and the measurements on that is a 16 by 26, and it's just a hand towel that I buy from Walmart, as well as the body towel, and the body part is 27 by 52 inches, and I bought both of those at Walmart. And then I'm going to be using a 6 by 10 embroidery hoop. Now that is just because I have the crown and the name that's going to be stitched in one hooping. If you have a 5 by 7, you can certainly make the design smaller, or you can reposition your design after you stitch one part and then move it so that you can stitch the name on. So you do have that option as well. Now for stabilizer, I'm going to be using a tearaway stabilizer. This is the number 15. It's the rip stitch from All Stitch, and it's just like the paper. It's like a paper type stabilizer, and so I'll use that. And then I will also use a water soluble stabilizer on top, and I'll show you why I do that. For my threads that I'm going to be using, so I'm going to be using white, but you will not see the white on the design. I'm going to be using white for my placement stitches, and then I've got the red. I'm sorry, these are brother. These are both not brother. These are by Coats. Goodness gracious. These are by Coats, and I buy these threads from a shop on eBay called Southern Threads. And then this thread I bought from a local embroidery store, and the brand I'm not familiar with, but it's called Exquisite. And this is the color that I'm going to be using for this. It's the closest I could find to match up with the yellow that I'm going to be putting on for my part of my applique. The needle sizes that I'm using, I use Oregon needles for my home embroidery machines, and this is a 7511, and this is the straight needle. So that is what I'm going to be using, or the sharp needle I should say. So that's what I'll be using for that. And for my bobbin thread, this is Embroidery and bobbin thread. It's 90 weight. The embroidery threads that are on top that you see with that nice sheen to it, these are 40 weight, but this bobbin thread is a 90 weight thread. And I do thread all of my own bobbins, so I just buy the big spool and just do it myself. So that's that. Then I'll have my fabrics, and what I'm going to do with my fabrics, because these are thin fabrics, and if I just put this yellow against this blue, you're going to see a good bit of blue through it. So I'm going to actually double these. I'm going to iron it, and I'm actually going to spray it with a little bit of basting spray just to hold it in place. It's not, basting spray doesn't do a permanent hold, but you will be able to use it to hold stuff in place. And that's all I really want to do, is I'm going to spray it in between the layers, iron it so that it stays together, and then that way I won't have to worry about it slipping or anything once I'm using it in the design. So I'll use that. Oh, and guess what? I got some Tula Pink duckbill applique scissors. I don't remember who told me about this. There were a few of you who said that I needed to try the duckbill scissors, because I've always had these little Fiskars that I got at Walmart, and they work just fine, but these are really nice. So thank you all for telling me I needed these. I've had them in my shopping cart with Amazon for a while, and I finally got them a few weeks ago. I will also be using some straight pins, because you know I float pretty much everything that I can float. I don't actually hoop my garments or anything. I float it on top of the stabilizer, and then I've got my scissors and everything. So I'm gonna start getting this set up and we'll get going. Okay, for the towel, I'm gonna fold it long ways so that it's as even as you could possibly get it, and then I'm gonna fold it this way so that I can see how it's gonna look as far as this, this will be the front of the hood, and then this is the back part that will be trimmed and curved so that it's not a point. So we know that this is going to be the front. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a pin right there to mark it, and I'm going to use the creases to line it up against these 4 points, against these 2 points actually, because remember, in all of your hoops you have those points that'll meet in the middle if you drew an imaginary line, and then that would be your dead center. So I'm just going to boy, this has a lot of lint on it, but okay, let's see here. I'm going to make sure this is right there, okay? And then I'm just filling that little nodule so I'll know that my crease is where I need it to be at. And straighten that there so I know that's where it needs to be. Now, if you're hooping this, you won't do it the same way, but if you're floating it, you do have the option of using a basting spray or a temporary adhesive spray. I just don't like that on everything because, one, it makes your hoops nasty, and two, for towels, that stuff is hard to get off of. So I don't do it. I'm just going to pin this down, and since I pretty much know where it's going to be at now, I pretty much have it in place, I'm going to use my water soluble stabilizer to drape on top of it, and this will keep the design from sinking in, and it also will keep the needle from jagging along the hoops or the loops from the towel. I hope somebody lets her out. Okay, so now I'm going to use the water soluble stabilizer on top, and I am going to pin it down out of the area that it's going to be getting stitched on, so you don't have to worry about the needles bumping it. And matter of fact, I'm going to take that one out because that was the needle that we used, or the straight pin that we used to mark where that center line needed to be at. And so I'm going to just pin it all down. And I'm hoping that this towel is staying straight in here. Sometimes you do have to eyeball it while you're putting it in place just to make sure that it is going together correctly. And so I'm just going to finish pinning this all the way around so that this is nice and taut, and I'll meet you at the machine. Okay, I thought I was going to meet you all at the machine, but I got to the machine and I realized I had my towel pinned on backwards from the way I want the design to be stitched. So I am going to unpin this and get this turned around. And I think that was where I paused because the dog was barking and I needed to go check and see if she needed out or whatever was going on. She was barking at my son. Okay, so now that I have the hoop where I need it, because this is where it goes into the machine, and the way I like to stitch my design is so that I'm looking at the design from this way. So this will be the bottom of the towel. So I'm gonna basically do the same thing all over again and get it ready. Okay. See, that's there. so that's there. Now, I'm going to take one pin and put here. Trying to get this done as quick as I can. Okay, now I'm going to get to the machine. Alrighty, I have my hoop on the embroidery machine now, and I'm holding my phone with my hand again because there are a couple of things that someone had asked me to point out to them. When I have my flash drive in over here, I'm going to go to this button right here to find my design. Now, I have 3 pages of designs, and each page holds 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, so 10 for each page. But I try not to put too many on a flash drive because everything is not gonna pull up if you have too much. So you use those arrows, scroll through, find the design that you're looking for. And this is the design for Royal. So I know that that's the design that I want. I'm gonna select Embroidery, and it loads it. Now, depending on how my machine is feeling, or I don't know if it's a matter of what the design size and dimensions are, I will be able to rotate while it's in the hoop, and I'll be able to rotate it the way I need it to sit. Right now, for some reason, it's only going to a couple of certain points. So what I'll do is I'm gonna slide this up, and then it's out of bounds. Okay, I knew it was out of bounds. Come on now. So let's go back in and let's see if that will. Nope. So it's still too much to rotate. I'm going to reset it. And I mean, just completely start all over again. Just because I know I can rotate this design, but sometimes some of these designs won't rotate. And I truly don't know why. I've had this machine for a couple of years, and that is one thing that I do not understand. But I'll just simply take it out of the lock, and it might be because this is the 10 by 6 or the 6 by 10 hoop. I'm not sure. But now it will let me rotate, because it's just a personal preference. I like for my design to be facing this way when it's being stitched, so that I know what orientation it's going to be. So now I'm going to put the hoop back on and lock it in, and that's that little lever that locks it. And I'm going to come back over here. Now, you want to know whether or not your machine is going to be, whether or not your design is going to be too big for the area that you have it lined up for. You do have this trace feature right here, and if you hit that trace feature, this will pop up, and each of these points correlate with an area on your design. So right now this is the center and that blue box is lit up. So if I hit this right here, and I'll just move the camera back a little bit because the needle will move, and you can see that it shows you over here where it's going to be and what part of the design is on there right there. Okay, and if I hit this, that's that far corner up here. So that's the outermost part of your design, and the machine also moved over there. And then I'll just go here. It went all the way to the top. It's all the way at the top. So that way you'll be able to see, is my item, you know, lined up where I need it to be? With this piece, it's really important because I'm going to be cutting the top part a little bit just to curve it after the design is stitched. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to be stitching over an area that I truly do need for cutting. So that is that. Now I will close that up. And then the next thing someone asks is about the placement stitches on the screen. I hope that I'm understanding this question correctly. So when my design is pulled up, this particular design has a total of 7 stitches, and you know that because it says 0 out of 7 up there, and it's supposed to take 26 minutes. It'll probably take a little bit longer, and it shows you how many stitches there are. Now stitch number 1, or color number 1, is the placement, and I just know that because of the directions that come with the designs that show you that that is the placement. Then the second stitch, which is the royal blue color 405, that is the tack down stitch for that section. And then it's going to jump to the 534, which is like a teal green, and that's going to be the placement stitch for the next piece, and then the tack down stitch afterwards. And then my satin stitches are going to be last. Okay, my satin stitches are, it looks like red and orange, but anyways, and there's one more after that that's just not showing on the screen. But yeah, 1 2 3 4 5 6, yeah, there's one more that's not showing. But anyways, that's what those look like. And then I'll just show you again as it's stitching out. Okay, so I have white thread in the machine right now, and I do the white thread simply because I like to have a contrasting thread when it comes to trimming around applique pieces. So I'm going to start with the white thread. This is going to be stitch number 1, the placement stitch, and I'm going to hit go. Now I have the red fabric that it looks like it's like fused together really stiffly, but it's just basting spray that I sprayed in between so that they don't slide apart, and I have an even piece of fabric there. And that's a little bit bigger than I need, but that's okay. And I always tell people, don't hold your fingers under there by that needle, because these needles will mess your fingers up. Okay, so now that is stitched and tacked into place. What I will do now is actually go through and I'm going to trim, and see, this is why I use the contrasting color so that I can trim around it. I'm sorry. All right, so I've got it all trimmed around, and now the next step is going to be the placement stitch for what will be the yellow, or in my mind, the gold part. And stitching the tack down the placement and the tack down in white really just helps for you to see when you're trimming it, or just a contrasting color. It doesn't have to be white, just a color that is not the same as the color of your fabric. And I'm going to turn this light back on, make it a little bit brighter. But this is the yellow fabric that I spray basting spray in between to hold it together. And I had to pull some of the strings out because I didn't realize I had strings in there. Okay, that will work. And I'm just going to lay that over top, making sure that it's covering all the placements. And this placement is stitch number 4 over here. Alrighty, so now I'm going to take that off the hoop. I'm going to trim it and we'll get ready. Well, it didn't cut my jump stitch. It normally cuts my jump stitches with no problem, but I don't know. I think it's just time for servicing. But I'm going to take this to the table. I'm going to trim all of that and then I will be back. Okay, so I've got this trimmed up and now I'm going to put it back on the machine. I'm going to change the thread and we're going to start doing those satin stitches. This part truly is not a long process. Not at all. I always try to pull it from through it and not backing it out of the machine because you don't want to mess up your tension discs. And now I'm using that Brother, what is this called? Foxy Red is the name on it. 5563. And I know that those thread stands are probably designed for bigger machines, but I just keep it away from that hand wheel so I don't have to worry about it getting thread caught up in my machine. So we're at stitch number 5, and I'm just going to try and zoom in so you can see on the machine that it's at stitch number 5. And I think that light interferes with the actual screen. So you see that's stitch number 5, and then we have 2 more stitches after that. So I'll get this going. And as always, I'm not going to sit here and record the whole satin stitch process because it's just a satin stitch. It's just a bunch of stitching back and forth. So I will check back in after a little while and we'll see how it's progressing. Alrighty, so that stitched out faster than I thought. That was all of the red, and I'll show you that up close. And now I am going to change the thread and stitch out the yellow, or the gold in my mind. And by the way, this crown design came from a shop on Etsy called ZDIGITIZING. I think it is how it's pronounced. That is ZDIGITIZING, and he has a lot of nice applique designs on that site. They do have a commercial, like not commercial, but they have like a .com of their own, and I honestly can't remember what it's called, but all of their designs are on Etsy as well, and they work out pretty good. I've actually never had a problem with any of them, and I don't know if he still does but I used to be able to do requests for specific types of designs, and now they weren't like for my private use, but because he would still, you know, list them on his page for sale. But if there was a design that you needed that was an applique and he was able to create it, he used to be able to do that. So I haven't needed anything specifically done lately, so I don't know if he still does that or not, but the designs that he has on his Etsy are great. Now I'm going to let that yellow stitch, and you know how I am, I'll be back. We are still stitching away on that satin stitch, which is stitch number 6 of 7. The last thing after this here complete stitching will be the child's name underneath the crown. Okay. Now this is almost complete, and since I'm going to be stitching the name Royal in the same color, there will be no thread change. I will simply let it go to its next spot and lower it and press go. And so now it's going to stitch out the name. Alrighty, so now this is finished stitching out, and we will go back to the table and get ready for the next step to make that rounded hood. Okay, so we are back at the table now, and I'm just going to unpin this. So that we can get the towel off of the hoop. And let's see, oh, there's another pin there. This is that water soluble stabilizer. It will just tear off. And since the spacing is pretty good in between it, I really will not have to wet it to get the other stuff off, to get the rest of it off that would be showing. What's up under the stitching will be fine. It'll actually just serve as a barrier to keep the threads from sinking down into the towel. And I'm going to tear this out of here because this is that tearaway stabilizer. You do need to take this off of the back and take off as much as you possibly can, because we're going to be closing this up, and once this towel starts getting washed, there will be no getting this out. It'll be a bunch of lumped up paper inside the towel. So whatever's not under the stitches, try to get all of that out. Sometimes it's easier said than done. Okay. And sometimes I do have to use just the tip of my scissors to kind of scrape it away a little bit. I'm sure there's probably a tool out there for this, but this is what I've used and it works. Especially with those small spaces like this in here. just to lift it up a little bit. And try not to snag up your towel. And just pull that out. These pieces are big enough to pull out for the most part. Okay, so we've got this all picked out and cleaned out. I'm going to take my lint brush and run the lint brush across it because you don't want a bunch of extra lint down inside your projects. The string I'm not too concerned about, and I'm actually going to cut this label off of the side here. Because the same directions will be on the towel part. And I'm just cutting that out to decrease the bulk. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna fold this towel long ways so that it's long ways like that. And I'm gonna make sure the ends are all evened up. And you have a couple of options that you could do at this point to keep the towel from not unraveling, but from separating and getting bulky and your customer or your kid having to realign it. You can just do a stitch down across the edge right here just to hold the, I don't know, do you call that the brim of the towel? Because this will be the hood. You could do a stitch right down the side here to hold it in place. Or you could just let it go and they could just reposition it or whatever at each time. But I'm going to do a stitch down here. And with my sewing machine, I do have, remember the bottom, which is the bobbin, and the top thread, they are the same color. I just wind my own bobbin so that I have matching colors. So I'm going to do that real quick and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm back. I did actually pin it down so that it didn't come too uneven on me, but I'll show you. I just did a stitch right down the front, and so you could kind of see where there's like a little lip there. So the next thing we want to do, because you want this to be, I say rounded, but it's truly not rounded. I guess it's more boxy, but it's definitely not pointy. So what I'll do is I want to fold it this way so that I can see where the back is gonna be at. I hope that this is making sense. I don't have an actual pattern to do this. I just kind of wing it and try to make it as even as possible. And so this is the hood. And what you're gonna do now is you're literally just gonna clip. Let me turn this around here. You're going to clip right across the top here, and then there will be a couple of extra steps that you'll be sewing. So I'll go through, I'll cut this, and I'll show you what parts I'm going to be sewing to make that a little more rounded or a little less pointed. It'll almost be boxy in my mind, but you'll see what I mean. So I'm just making sure that this is lined up, and you can pin these in place just for the sake of making sure that you don't get too uneven. Let's see here. I'm just looking at these points on the crown here because I do want to make sure that they're as balanced as possible. Okay. And now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to cut. Let me turn this sideways here so you can see better. And I'm not going to cut too close to the design, but I'm going to cut that tip off, okay? And so now what I'll have to do, when I open it, it looks really weird, but what I'll have to do is this. Okay. Okay, I got kind of ahead of myself and I had to stop the camera and think about this. It's too early. So we want this to keep that shape. This is the back seam, right? So you're gonna take this part and you're gonna fold it downwards like that and just bring them in to each other so that once you get ready to do that stitch going down the back of the hood, you won't have a problem with that stitch. I am gonna pin it. And try to close it up there. Let's see here. Okay, so I have it pinned right here and it goes across the top just like that. And this is the part we're going to stitch first. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Going to fold it downwards. And it does kind of form a upside down V. And you could use as many pins as you need to be sure that it's not going to come uneven. But I'm going to stitch that right there as well. And so when we get done, you'll have these two and they'll line up and meet. So I'm going to go sew these. I'm just going to do a zigzag stitch and then I'm going to come behind the zigzag stitch with a straight stitch just because I want to make sure that it's secure. I am using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, give or take, because it doesn't stay right there on mark. But I'm going to sew this and I'll be back. And for the part that's going to be sewn, or for the sewing segment, I am going to be using my Brother SC425, which is a sewing embroidery combo. I'm going to be using the sewing function. I'm using just a universal, I believe it's a number 14 needle, but don't quote me, I'm not sure what size needle is in the machine right now. But it is a stronger needle than the 7511 that we use for embroidery. Now, as far as threads are concerned, I am going to be using a Coats thread. Is that all-purpose? No, it doesn't say all-purpose, but I'm going to be using this Coats thread that I bought at Walmart, and I do wind the bobbin so that it has a matching color, okay? And that's just for sewing purposes because I want the color of thread to be the same regardless of which size. For the embroidery machine, I pretty much always use white embroidery thread, bobbin thread, because nobody sees it unless I'm doing a freestanding lace, and then I would change the thread. But for sewing, I do put the same color bobbin thread. I thread my own bobbins and just have them match up. Okay, so I've stitched those two parts and this is what it looks like so far. Okay, you can see that it's just stitched across the top there, and you can almost see, if you can use your imagination, how it will come together, because we're going to bump those against each other, and that is the hood. And so it's going to be a little more squared off at the top versus being pointy. But we're not done yet. We still have a few extra steps to do. So what I'm going to do now, you want to take each side and you want to take these, I call them wings, but this is what's going to be the back of the hood, and you have to sew those together. Now I would imagine you could probably stitch them together at the same time and just keep it to where it's not moving, but I've not been able to get that to work. This is how I'm able to get it to work. So I do have to pin all of these down. And with this, I'm only going to do a straight stitch. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here, lining it up so that it's as straight as possible. I don't worry about this here because that's not going to be seen, but I do pin them in place as close as possible here. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the machine. I'm just going to do a straight stitch from this point, that point right there, all the way down to right in there. And I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. Okay, so I have those sewn. I'm going to take these needles, straight pins out so I can show you what I mean. And it just seems like it doesn't matter how hard I try, I keep getting lint. Guess I need to roll off my table. Sorry about that. I know that little bit of lint is not gonna make a big difference, but just in case it could. So this is how it's sewn up now. I've got those two sections, not two sections, this section here where it's the top of the design where I clipped it off, and then I sewed that up. Then I came through and I took that, lined it up and sewed it down. And it is only sewn down to right there, but that'll be okay. And it's the same on both sides. Okay, so it's sewn across and it's sewn straight down. For this part, I did use a zigzag stitch because that there's no actual border per se. I did the zigzag stitch and then I came across it with a straight stitch. For this part, I just did a straight stitch and I use 1/4 inch seam allowance. So now I'm going to turn this right side out so that you're actually seeing the design, and it almost looks like a wonky bag or something being started, but you've got your lines here, and I'm going to tuck this up under there so that these two corner pieces that I clipped off, they're going to bump up against each other. And you've got your hood forming. And it does come back a little bit further than I wanted it to. I should have used a smaller design. You can use smaller designs, like I guess a 4x4 design or a 5x7 design. And this was a design that was a little bit bigger, but I think it'll still come out pretty cute because that's literally going to be on top of the head, okay, like a crown. So now what you can do to keep these from separating, you could just get a little bit of thread and run it through, or you could probably use some heat and bond on the inside. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do the thread. I'm going to get a straight needle, you know, a hand sewing needle, and I'm just going to make a few darts where I match these two pieces up against each other right in that seam. Okay, so let me find my straight needle and some thread. Okay, so I've got my hand sewing needle and it's threaded with the same color thread that I'm using for this towel. I am going to truly just start from the inside, and it's not going to be a whole lot of sewing, just enough to line these up. Okay, so I'm just meeting the points and I'm going to pull the thread through, and I'm going to hold on to the knot that's at the end of my needle because I want to loop this through it. And be careful not to stick yourself. So that'll come back through. And what I mean by looping it through it, this is the knot that's at the end. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm going to just put my needle through there so that it doesn't slip through the towel. And then I'm going to go back through one more time on this side, and I keep flipping it back and forth because I want to make sure that it is actually in the crease and not somewhere else on the towel. And now I'm going to kind of move over to the other side, because when I say the other side, I'm looking at this seam line. But I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to pull it through. And let's see here. Did it pull through? No, that doesn't look good. It did not pull through. Okay, now it's all pulled through. Then I'm going to go through that little seam again. And sometimes you just have to feel for the seam, because after you're looking at the same color for so long, for me anyways, it all starts looking alike. Okay, and so now that's pulled through, and I'm going to go through one more time. Making sure that that is there. And I'm just going to cross through this and tie it in a knot. Let's see, which way is that going? Okay, so I got to come back this way to make it a knot. Okay, and I'll push that down just to make sure it's as close as possible and do my knot. Now there are probably tons of ways that you can end your hand sewing as far as the thread is concerned. This is just the way I do it. I'll just stick that over there for now, clip it, and so now you have your hood like so. Now I don't know why my machine did not clip those jump stitches here, because normally it does. I'm just going to clip them. And yes, I'm using the old Fisker embroidery scissors because for the jump stitches it gets under there really good. Okay, so now the rest of this is pretty much the same way that I did the other towel in my other hooded towel video. What I'll do is I'm going to get the full body towel. That's not it. I'll get the full body towel, and I'm going to find the tag. First of all, I want the tag to be at the bottom, and then I'm going to find the center point of the towel right here, and I'm going to take the center point. Well, actually what I'm going to do first is I'm going to clip this off. Okay, I'm going to clip this here off so that it's nice and even. I forgot about that. Please forgive me. I'm not sure if I really wanted to sew that on there like that ridge, but I don't want to take any chances. So I'm going to clip this here off down here. Okay, this is what I should have done. Come up under it. And I'm just trying to get all the bulkiness off, because that will be a whole headache for you to try to sew, for me to sew anyhow. Okay, so now we have this. You could do two things. Well, you could do a couple things. If you have a serger, you can go through and serge down this to make it nice and neat. And that is what I'm going to do real quick. And I'll have to do a different video on a different day for serging, because where my serger machine and my sewing machine is right now, it's a whole mess. I really need to clean up my craft room, and I cannot show it right now. But I'm going to run a serger across this real quick, and I'll be right back to attach it to the hood. I mean, to the body of the towel. And for serging purposes, I am going to be using a Serger Stylist serger. Can you believe that I actually have a Serger product? Most of my machines are Brother, but I do have the Serger serger, and I have another Serger machine that I don't use very often, but they work great. The color is black as far as the thread is concerned, because these things are a beast to thread, and I'm not going to change thread colors until I am finished with the black. When that black runs out, I'll switch it to white, and you can see a glimpse of some of the mess that I have in the background, and this is why I am not going to be showing the sewing or serging segment, because this side of my room is a whole mess. Okay, so I'm done with the serging, and this is what the serger will do. And you don't have to have a serger machine to do this. You can just use the zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. For me, just because I have the serger, it makes it a lot quicker. So I put it together there with the serger, and I'm going to clip these extra tails off after I tie them in a knot. And I honestly don't know if you need to tie it in a knot or not. I don't use the serger very often, and I don't even think I ever read the instructions on how to no, I know I've never read the instructions on how to use it. Just kind of winging it and calling one of my girlfriends and trying to find some YouTube videos of people who actually know what they're doing with a serger machine. So now you've got that part here. This is the center line right here, of course. And like I started saying before, you want to find the bottom of the towel where the tag is, and make sure you keep that tag at the bottom. So I'm going to turn it around so that this is the top. I'm going to fold it in half so that I can find my center point for the back of the towel. So this is the center point that'll be at the back of the towel. I am going to bump this right side out against the right side of this, okay? I am talking to myself as I do this. Okay, sorry. So you've got the right sides bumped together. I'm going to put the towel, the hood part, just a little bit below that edge of the towel here, okay? Because this is going to be two different types of stitches we're going to do for this. So I want to pin this together right there so that the centers are with the centers. The centers are with each other. And I'm going to continue pinning each side of the hood just below that brim. Is that a brim? Yeah, that is a brim. Or at least that's what I'm going to call it, the brim. Get that together. And I was trying to make this video not so long by not, going through details that have already been done in other videos. But sometimes you just can't help it, I guess. Let's get this pinned together. Excuse me. Okay, so these are pinned together. I'm going to go through, I'm just going to do a straight stitch here to connect it all. And where I'm stitching out with this is actually just below this here band, but right within where I serged it at. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I have the first stitch of putting the hood onto the body of the towel done. Definitely have to be careful when pulling the pins out. So now, to keep that from looking so ugly, I'm gonna do another stitch which will go upwards, okay? And for some that might seem like a little overkill, but at the end it makes it look so nice and finished. Even though this is, of course, it's handmade, homemade, however you want to coin it, but to me it just makes it look a little bit better when you have neater stitches done. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is basically, and I forget the term for this because there is a term for when you stitch it like this. I just can't remember it right now, but I'm going to pin this together and trying to keep it as even as possible because you don't want it to be all cattywampus and bulky. And just to be sure, I just turn it over just to see how it looks on the back, just to make sure it's not too crazy looking. That there could stand to be straightened out a little bit right there. So I'm going to try to lay that a little bit flatter. Pin it down. Okay, and so for this I'm going to run my stitch right across this band here. Okay, now I feel bad because I'm not showing you my actual machine, but when I do my stitches, this is going to be a straight stitch. Please, if you're newer at stitching, remember to always do a back stitch first and then go forward with your stitching. Okay, and I think I showed that in the last video with the towel. So I'm going to stitch this and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have it all connected now. This is where I stitched it down along that edge there, and then in the back it's just kind of lapped over a little bit, and some parts did lay flatter than others, but you know, I always have to keep in mind, and I always like to remind people, these are handmade products. They are not perfect. Sometimes they will be a little wonky, but the goal is to try to get it as nice as possible and presentable. So this is how the towel looks for the most part. I do want to show you the difference between the actual pointed towel and the towel that I just did without the point. I actually started making this towel and I realized I hadn't taken the point out. So this is the point, if you can see that, versus the part where I took the point, I clipped that off. Okay, and so it does make a little bit of a difference as far as how it looks, but that's it. So I don't need that. That was just a mistake. I'm going to keep this one and roll with it, or I should say Royal will roll with it. And if you have any questions about anything or any suggestions, definitely let me know. I do try to answer all of the questions in my comment box to the best of my ability. But if you have any suggestions for any other items that you would like to see done that can be done on a home embroidery machine, let me know. I do understand that, no, I don't like the way that looks. I'm gonna have to figure out how I want to fold that. But I do understand most of the people who follow me right now have home embroidery machines, and so that's cool. I only have home embroidery machines, so we are of a tribe. But I'm going to figure out how to wrap this up so that it's presentable. And goodness, that's about it. I thank you all for stopping by. I feel like I'm rambling sometimes, but I do have some other videos that I will be recording with some smaller items, some things that can be done on the 5x7 and even a 4x4 hoop. So stay tuned, and I hope to get it done sooner than this video took, because I do apologize. It took 3 months for me to get another video out, but I'm back, and I hope that you all will stick around for a while. Thank you.